March 20th, 2025, EOCO received intelligence again, additional intelligence, that the suspect had cancelled his flight and rescheduled his arrival to Ghana from Dubai to April 18, 2020. That's April 8, not 18. April 8, 2020. On March 20th, around 3 p.m., EOCO's operational team, led by the acting deputy executive director in charge of operations, assessed this operational plan to include the possibility that the suspect could have traveled back to London to fly to Ghana in an attempt to evade surveillance. EOCO assessed with high confidence that the changes made by the suspect in terms of arrival date in Ghana may have been calculated step to mislead investigators and throw them off any possible surveillance. He and his wife, Miss Angela Ejeboatin, registered a company on October 23, 2018, which they named, and listen carefully, BNC Communications Bureau Limited. It is important to note that the similarity between the names here, that is BNC, was designed, to engage in a criminal enterprise. Mr. Ejeboatin, who is the head or who was the head of the BNC, and his wife are listed as directors of the private BNC. On October 26, 2018, the couple opened a corporate account for their private BNC at Universal Merchant Bank, UMB. In his capacity as director of the national BNC, Mr. Ejeboatin on January 30th, 2020, signed a contract on behalf of the government of Ghana and the National Security Council on the one hand, and on the other hand, an Israeli company called ISC Holdings Limited. The contract was for the purchase of a cyber defense system software at a price of $7 million United States of American dollars. Let us call this contract the GOG ISC contract. The sum of 39,462,480 Ghana cedis of taxpayers' money went into their private pockets. The investigation has revealed that the ultimate beneficial owner of BNC Communications Limited is another company known as Advantage Solutions Limited. 10 other companies are through a very complex web of shareholding and directorship connected to Mr. Ejeboatin and his wife, Angela. Okay. The properties that are in their names are as follows. We have number 2 Stream Park Drive, Mayfair Estates, LA, that is Accra. For that, they deposited, and we have a deposit slip as well as a receipt from the estate developer, $1 million United States of American dollars. Number 6, Edith Avenue, Mayfair Estates, Accra. Deposit 500,000 United States of America. That's American dollars.
Right, so Attorney General Dominic Ayine addressing the press there. And so he gave a briefing and gave us updates as to what he conclusively says was a clear criminal enterprise by the director of the Signals Bureau and his wife and the numerous companies that they have set up, and in seeking to purchase this particular device for the state, ended up setting up a company or an account, a company, similar to, or an account similar to that of the NSB account, and doing transactions among himself as director of the Signals Bureau and then owner of the company of the other account. So he works for the government. So they bought something. He takes the money, puts it from the government account, puts it into his private company's account, and how the monies were paid, among others. On the Sky Train, he spoke about the fact that the $2 million was paid at the request of the chairman of the board of the Ghana Infrastructure Investment Fund, that is Professor Amir Kunfi, and the CEO, Asamoah, who he alleged is hiding in South Africa. Asamoah has written a letter, a press release saying that he's not hiding. He's giving specific times and he will be in the country. He says the investigation showed that there was no board approval for the transaction and the conditions precedent for the payment of the $2 million were not met before it was paid. The payment was done to a Mauritius company. They have used lawyers in Mauritius and have confirmed that that company does not exist. And the $2 million that was paid, 1.9 million of that was paid into a certain, share account. It's supposed to be for the purchase of some equipment. So how did it become a share account thing? And so on and so forth. On the National Service scandal, he says 8 suspects have been interrogated and they are singing, according to him, singing. He says that they have evidence of payments that were made by private vendors and staff of the National Service into the private accounts of top executives of the National Service Authority, and that a certain MP, the CEO and others paid a certain MP to defend them and to kill the story in the media. This is where the Attorney General is accused of prosecuting his case in the public rather than in the courts. Wanda.
Yes, I don't fully agree with this sort of strategy, because I do know that, it is $21.9 billion that, the oral team have told us is involved. And, there's public sensitization and letting the public know about this level of corruption. However, for instance, if you look at this document, the properties list from Yoko, or compiled by Yoko, and he adduced this or shared this, this would be an even more powerful document if it had, a court stamp on it and date, and it was adduced in evidence. So his approach, although it is to sensitize the public, is wrong, because even the current finance minister went through this himself, and a courtroom is an open, a public place where the media can come if it's in the public interest, etc. But he also mentioned, and you didn't play that the reason why he hasn't actually brought charges is that they're still compiling evidence. So if you haven't got all your ducks in a row, why would you fully criminalize someone in the public domain? At least on the day of charging them, do that. And I say this as someone who has worked at the Attorney General's Department like 14 years ago, even though it wasn't within the criminal department. But, I've done this in the UK as well. This is pure white-collar crime, layering, money laundering and masking. It's an obvious case. The Attorney General will win on this. But it is better that as he wishes to go on, he should start well and adduce this in a court of law, even on the day you file. You know what I mean? Maybe that filing could be leaked if you want, etc., in the public interest or whatever. But for him to actually say in that video that it wasn't shown, that he hasn't actually got all the evidence in terms of they're still finalizing their case only when he is absolutely sure that it's an airtight case.
That's in respect of one of them. That's in respect of one of them on the oral issue. But for Edubuahen and his wife, and there are several companies and, dozens of homes, he says that one, he's very sure about it.
But charges haven't been brought.
He can get conviction, and actually saying that the other people in the companies, they should think about it. They know how the monies have been moved, etc. Some of them can really come and be used as witnesses, do plea bargain, so that they don't get incarcerated.
Yes, but he is also a member of the bar, first and foremost, and he's in fact the leader of the bar. And there is a standard, right to a fair trial, presumed innocence, until proven guilty, etc. And he's a professor of law, and these are the benchmarks I think he must follow, because anybody can look at this evidence and say it's an airtight case, he's going to win it. So why not wait a few more weeks as they compile that in order for a charge to be brought? Because everyone is presumed innocent until proven guilty.
He's a public officer.
He is, but there is a fine line.
Is he entitled to let the public know?
He's entitled to let the public know that there's 21.9 billion, and these are highlights of the case we just filed last week, like top 3, etc. But it is a public persecution to a certain extent. This is done in a court of law, and it's an open courtroom where, in the public interest, all the media would be allowed in, even the evidence, the exhibits, the filings, everything. But we cannot make it a habit and normality to adduce this level of evidence and focus on individuals, focus on the policy, focus on the things you've just filed, focus on the fact that you're liaising with international counterparts. Because if we're talking about 21.9 billion, I don't think it's in the country. You know what I mean? The majority of that wouldn't be in the country. So, he's
talking about specific cases,
yes,
where they can trace the monies.
Yeah.
That were, in a Dubois saying you're saying you're buying a certain software for the use of the country. The money is paid, and then the money is found to have been withdrawn and used to buy houses and all sorts of things.
Masking, layering, money laundering, particularly as a public officer, is wrong. There's a higher standard. He was only given that money because he was in a position of trust. And so he is a public figure, and this is why this is happening to him. But procedurally, I don't think it would have been wrong if the Attorney General had that press conference on the exact day he filed.
Oh, okay.
That's my because that's...
Because you are used to other jurisdictions, so I was going to ask you, in the US, we see the DA's office, they do press conferences.
Yeah.
We see them almost everywhere. Even here in Ghana, the police issue statements about, suspects and what they have found and so on and so forth. And also the Office of Special Prosecutor, by the workings of their law, also go out and say these things.
Yes, the mayor of New York, I think, is being charged currently.
Right.
And it is something that is in the public interest for New York, that jurisdiction. But I also think he was charged, before all of this information came out. So There's a fine line, and I think it's wonderful that he holds press conferences because the public do want to know what happened to that 21.9 billion. And we want to know that it's something that never happens again. And the only way that can happen is if we hold these people to account who did this. And we're talking about jail time, retrieval of money, and working with, international counterparts.
Okay.
But still, there is a presumption of innocence until proven guilty.
Right. Victor?
Yes, I think that, yes, there's nothing wrong when the Attorney General decides to carry the public along by giving them information, especially when there is an allegation of some criminal activities where some other people are involved. This is about taxpayers' money. When it comes to, so once it's taxpayers' money, is a public issue, people have interest in it, the public, because there is an allegation that there has been corruption. People were involved. So you want to carry the citizens along by giving them information. Now, he is a public officer. He is the principal advisor to government. Now, government owes the people the duty to provide information that this is what has been done. In the other vein also, he is a lawyer, right? So when he puts on the hat as a public officer giving information to the people that this is the job you've given to me, so far, this is what we have done. This is what we have seen. The matter is not in court as at now. So he's giving them information. But now, if the matter moves into court, by our ethics, you cannot be a lawyer in the matter whilst you are prosecuting the matter and still be doing a trial. That is why you say you are trying in the media.
Is there no exception for public interest matters?
In public, that is why we have the journalists and others who come into the court and they report what has to be done.
So he could only have done it before
Yes.
He went to court.
Yeah, he went.
After he goes to court,
after he goes
he's
to
not
court,
allowed
I'm
to do
sure
that.
it will be unethical for him to be saying, maybe the PRO to the Attorney General, what is going on, that he may brief people. But for him as a person to come into the media and say, I think ethically it will not be right. So I think that what he's done so far is to, but he should also, it should be a balancing act, because taking a clue from what had happened previously, we have seen information being given to the public. At the end of the day, it was largely more propaganda than the actual matter, the facts that were presented in court. And, people had perception that if this is the information you are giving to us, why is it that you are not getting conviction in the matters, and the matters prolonged? These are things that I think that the Attorney General should have that balancing act to make sure that the facts that you have, the details, all the people are entitled to know that this is the stage we've gotten to, this is what we said, this is what we have found, and the court will take over when we are in court. You present the facts before them. But if you do it the other way around, you may have problems. Because with my practice, the little years that I have, almost 2 decades in this, you realize that when the matter has been given some slant in the media or within the public domain before it gets to court, the judges are very, very careful, because already the atmosphere has been poisoned. So in handling the matter...
So this puts undue pressure on the judges?
It puts pressure on the judges, and the judges are also very careful in handling the matter.
And is that good?
I don't think it is. In one vein, it engages the public opinion. But as a judge, fidelity to the law and what you think the law says.
So if you do this and then say you poison the atmosphere and then prove beyond reasonable doubt you don't meet that threshold and the person is acquitted and discharged,
yes, you make it
then
difficult.
The public say, what did the court do? We told you, these courts, this is how corrupt they are.
But at the end of the day also, you as the person, the Attorney General, you may have some blot on your career. Because you have said one thing, you've not been able to convict the people, you've not been able to prosecute. So they'll say, you're always losing your cases. You're losing your cases. And the people will not have that trust and confidence and say that...
This time, let me go to Dr. Sain before I come to Nana Ejeiba to speak at the end. Yes, Doc, is this something we should do? You are the guys who are the anti-corruption forefront. Are you guys happy and excited about this process that the Attorney General says he's going to be giving us briefings as they catch thieves, so to speak?
So this is my response to the strategy that the AG is adopting. And I go back to something that former President Nana Akufo-Addo said, which I also think did not help in the ratings of perceptions of corruption that we saw under his tenure. He often would say, and I agree with him, that not until you are in trouble with the law, you never appreciate the importance of due process. In fighting corruption, that approach satisfies what I call the legal test. Make sure that everything that you do protects and guarantees the rights of the accused, all of those things. So that's perfectly fine. But there's also an appearance test when you're fighting corruption. And that is what you do in the political arena in keeping citizens informed and engaged in the process as you go along. For me, that strong attachment to it's all about due process, and therefore I don't update or comment on any cases that is ongoing, in my opinion, did hurt the president when citizens had to, in places like Afrobarometer, rate perceptions of corruption. This Attorney General, I believe, is trying to make up for the other side of the anti-corruption efforts or fight, which is you need to also demonstrate to the public that efforts are going on, and they get to judge whether those efforts are in the right direction or in the wrong direction. So you want to do it in a way that doesn't prejudge your suspects and sort of declare them guilty in the court of public opinion. But I think that regular provision of information is really helpful. For me, it also pricks our conscience into really looking at our anti-corruption efforts and asking ourselves what more should we need to do? Because some of these alleged cases is quite baffling if you listen to the amounts involved. And perhaps you need that public engagement to also begin to say to us, what more can we do in this anti-corruption fight beyond, a regime has to leave before some of these things can come up and be investigated and all of that. So I don't fault the Attorney General for this public engagement part of the work that he's doing around some of the alleged cases of corruption.
Do you think that the Attorney General is somewhat compelled to preempt, or it's actually a reaction because you, the opposition, led by Afenyo Making, are quick to come, talk to the media in Parliament and beyond Parliament about how, things are being done wrongly? For example, last week, we're talking about Bank of Ghana, former governor's house raid. Then we find out that, there were warrants duly procured. It was not a raid. There were conversations that he was not, he didn't have lawyer or whatever. We found there was lawyer. All the things that were required to be followed were followed. And yet, from the opposition side, the public were told about how the Constitution had been breached and all their rights have been breached. You don't think this is what is encouraging that?
No, well, I'm not in a position to say so, because he never said what motivated him to hold the press conference. And I'm not very respectfully, inclined to speculate. And so I wouldn't say so. But be that as it may, the Attorney General has a greater responsibility. He has a greater responsibility. Look, Dr. Aini is somebody I have deep respect for, even though I didn't have the privilege of being his student. I have a lot of respect for him. He's my friend. He treats me with, some degree of respect, even though he's senior to me at the bar. And so whenever I have to comment on an issue involving him, I'm very careful. But I think that as much as a balance is required, as much as some information to the public is necessary, there's indeed the need for a balance. On this occasion, what he did, there were too many constitutional infractions in respect of what he did. For instance, he is not just the Attorney General, but he's also the Minister for Justice. And so there ought to be a balance in whatever he does. He has to take into account the fundamental human rights of the accused, including the right that he's presumed to be innocent until proven guilty. That would then mean that even the way you are handling the facts in your press conference ought to be more of caution than categorical.
He wasn't nuanced about it.
That's right. It came across as though, as far as he's concerned, that case is done.
Yeah.
The person has been nailed. More importantly, he was giving out a list of properties that are supposedly owned by this person, right? The truth of otherwise of it, we don't know. However, I don't have any reason to doubt Dr. Aini, except to say that the person we are dealing with has not been convicted. And so the privacy, right, of property, right, under the Constitution, the right to privacy under the Constitution is still there for him.
There's an exception right there under the Constitution, escalating to.
But the question is, does it come under the exception yet? He has not been convicted by any court. And so that he has to be protected. That protection ought to be there. And so
there's a suspicion of crime, so it's broken. But the privacy right doesn't apply.
But the suspicion of crime becomes necessary for procuring evidence through the court process, not when you have to come out and put it in the public domain, as if, you know, you've established beyond reasonable doubt that those properties were procured with the proceeds of crime. It is wrong.
No, he says this money was put here and then was taken by him again. He took sacks of cash, perhaps,
that's evidence.
and then used it to pay deposit for this house, pay deposit for that house. So he's following the money.
That evidence has not been tested. The information you are giving us, right? What is the guarantee that the evidence based on which you made those conclusions will even be admitted in a court? We were here when in the NCA matter, a statement, for instance, given by an accused person was excluded by the court for not being admissible. That, for me, is another evidence that whatever you are even playing with may not be admitted by the court.
You just mentioned NCA. You know, early in the days of the MPP administration, you remember there was a certain purchase of certain equipment just like this one.
Yes.
And some people...
The Pegasus.
Yes, some people went to jail for that. Mustafa Hamid sat in this studio and made the announcement for the very first time for the public to hear about how is this $7 or $9 million US had been stolen in the name of going to buy whatever equipment.
He was not the Attorney General.
Did I hear anyone of you say that was wrong?
No. He was not the Attorney General. I would say it was wrong. I would say it is wrong today. I would say it is wrong tomorrow. I believe in building institutions of state, growing a culture of consistency, so that every citizen in this country will know what he's up against anytime, any day.
My apologies, but time just ran out on us. My guests have been Amanda Okoko Clinton, head of Clinton Chambers, Clinton Consultancy. Honorable Ikoyotu joined us earlier, former Attorney General and Minister for Justice. Victor Kojoga Adawudu is member of the NDC legal team. Nana Ejay Bafo Ewa is MP Mensha South. Of course, he's a lawyer. And Dr. John Osai Kwapong is a fellow of the CDD, your Afro Barometer man. My outfit, as always, is by Konati Clothing, 0244 676732. They have 10 to 15% discount for you if you call now to make your purchases. This show is brought to you by the candid sponsorship of Bank of Africa, as strong as a group and close as a partner. MTN, everywhere you go. Yes, it's Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, His Excellency, the former president's birthday. Happy birthday to you, sir. Ashesi University, educating ethical and entrepreneurial leaders for Africa. Robert & Sons Optical Services, your comprehensive eye care service provider for 33 plus years. My Way Insurance, dial *165# on MTN to join My Way today. DBS Industries, roofing, Papa Fee, Flamingo Paints, Simply Superior, Syntex Tanks, the strongest stuff. Activa International Insurance, our clients, our passion. Happy birthday once again to the former president, Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo.